welcome to Hudson Valley News and Views. I'm County Legislator Catherine Borgia, and my guest today is Joe Bravo, who is the Executive Director of the Westchester Independent Living Center. We're actually here in your facility. Thank you very much for hosting us.
Thank you for coming.
On Hamilton Avenue in White Plains. Now, I was really surprised to learn recently about the wide extent of services that you do have here in this facility. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background and tell us some of the things that you provide here?
Sure. The center has been around for 32 years, and I've been around as long as the center's been around, so I'm an old-timer here. We provide an array of services, as you said, that really are meant to help people be as independent or become as independent as they can be. So there is no standard of what independence. It's a very individual thing, but we'll do things, everything from benefits assistance to help somebody receive the benefits that they may need. We also do programs that just help people be ready to go to work. What is that readiness that everybody needs that we take for granted, but that many disabled people never acquired over the years? So we do some workshops on just readiness. We call it our Partners for Success program, which really empower people to take more responsibility for themselves. Many of the people that work for us are people with disabilities who can share their own experiences as peers with other disabled people, which in many ways breaks down a lot of the walls. Okay, it's not just a professional saying to you, this is what you should do, but it's someone that really has lived it, who has gone through it. Over the years, I spent time talking to newly disabled people at a place like Burke Rehab here in Westchester. Newly disabled person who's very overwhelmed with the idea of what is life going to be like. Well, I can talk firsthand about doing rehab and going through that process. So we have a program, it's part of a Department of Health, New York State Department of Health waiver, that really helps provide services and develop services for people in the community. And we coordinate that on the contract with Department of Health in the Hudson Valley region. So it really is such a wide range of disabilities that we deal with, as well as ages, because we have programs for parents that have young kids with disabilities that are struggling to receive appropriate services in school. And then we have programs for seniors in terms of helping them have a better quality of life in the community. I know we're meeting the needs of people because we hear it every day that they thank us for being able to assist them and give them that next step, because it's not like we're not going to do it for you, you're going to do it for yourself.
So how do your clients reach you? How do they know about you?
I'm always amazed about that, because mostly it's word of mouth, I think. We've always periodically, done public relations, try to get articles in the paper, do TV shows that help people understand who we are and that we're here. But it's mostly word of mouth. But I am always amazed after 32 years how many people say, how long have you been in existence? When did your program start? Because you almost take for granted that everybody knows you and that you've done so much. But the fact of the matter is everybody does. And when people look for you is when they need you. And one of the things that we do, if we're not able to help you, we try to get you to the right place that can help you. So we do a lot of information and referral as well to get the person to whom might be able to help.
So who are some of your partnering agencies that you work with?
Wow.
Lots, hundreds.
Yeah, we have lots. Certainly all the county programs, Office for the Disabled, Department of Community Mental Health is a big partner. But we deal, and over the years, and all these years, I think we've dealt with almost everybody for different programs, whether it's domestic violence programs. We really attempt to work with anyone that's going to connect us to people with disabilities. I think the greatest society has changed a great deal in my lifetime. In the 30 years that I've been here, 32 years, things are more accessible in this community. Westchester you have things like curb cuts that people take for granted, but if you're in a chair or mobility impaired without a curb cut, you can't go 2 blocks. Well, we have a lot of curb cuts, in White Plains and most of the communities because laws have changed and mandate certain things. So I think that sense of a community being more accessible makes it easier for people kind of to embrace disability and see. But there are certain communities, I think minority communities are more reluctant still to embrace the idea that someone may be disabled, and it's okay to disclose and identify that, that it might help you receive other services. But I think it's an ongoing process, and I think it's gotten much better as society has gotten more open and more accessible in general. I mean, I remember growing up, I always had a call ahead of time when I wanted to go somewhere just to see if I was going to be able to get in. I wouldn't ever think about it. Now, I'm assuming that a place is accessible, and if I find occasionally a place isn't, I'm kind of surprised that why isn't this place accessible? We should be talking to the owner about why isn't it accessible. Just because the laws require things to be so much more accessible. So when something isn't, you kind of are struck by that these days.
Would you say that some of the work that you do here is advocacy?
Absolutely. It's one of the big things that we do is general community awareness, advocacy on a lot of issues. And, you know, starting way back when the Americans with Disabilities Act was being proposed, which is basically the civil rights law for people with disabilities in the late 80s, early 90s. We really worked hard to get the passage of that and talking to Congress people. And fortunately, we have Nia Lowy, who was extremely helpful in that process. We had a real ally in Congress to make that happen.
So someone staring at you, is that a learning moment, teachable moment?
It is, but after a certain point in time, you're just annoyed.
Of course. And that's not your responsibility either.
To teach everybody. And when you're in your own world doing your own thing, sometimes it's difficult. But on a daily basis, people ask me, can I assist you get the chair in and out of the car?
And that's a good thing, right?
It's a good thing, but I must say that at one point in my life, it annoyed me. What I've learned to say is, no thank you, but thanks for asking. Because there may be somebody who they do ask who really does need the help. And that might be an opportunity for them to say, yes, please do help me. Most people take that and go, okay. Some people do insist on helping me anyway. I have less patience for those people.
Well, they have savior complexes, I guess.
Exactly. Or they don't think I could possibly have said, no, I don't need help. And that's a little annoying, but that's very few and far between. I think people are trying to be helpful. And certainly, you know, my wheelchair is one, you can't even push it. I have nothing for people to grab purposely, because when I was younger, I used to have a chair that people could just push me. And they would just start pushing me. And I didn't want to be pushed. I wanted to push myself. So sometimes people just need to listen and hear what the person really wants. And I think most people will tell them. Now, there are people that might get annoyed if you ask them. But that's human nature. I always say, if you were annoyed before you became disabled, you're probably going to be annoyed after you're disabled with people. Because personalities really don't change.
Of course not.
Your personality stays the same. So if you're nasty, you're nasty. But most people, I think, you know, just are gracious enough to just say thank you for the help.
Well, I mean, this is obviously not a perfect analogy, but I remember when my children were little and I would have a toddler and a carriage, that sometimes I really did want help, but sometimes I didn't need it either.
It's true.
So you know, if I was walking down the stairs of the subway and somebody offered to help, that would be great.
Grab that carriage. It's true.
So do you think that have the needs changed too of the disabled population? Have disabilities changed? Are there different things that you see emerging over the course of the years?
There certainly seems to be. I almost have called it just more disabilities. But I think what's happened is people have been more accepting. So the numbers of people that now identify as having a disability has increased. Now, we certainly have seen the whole issue of autism in the last few years has just exploded. And people asking lots of questions. Why? Is it just a different diagnosis? And these kids were always there as mentally retarded or DD kids. And now they're being classified as autistic. A lot of people say no, that there's an increase in this particular disability called autism. So that has occurred. I think the issues, unfortunately,
because autistic people are not necessarily retarded. I think
and they're very high functioning. Very high functioning autistic people that function well. It's sometimes their personal interaction may be not what one would consider as regular interaction. They have the inability to have that, but they're very intelligent and can function at a very high. And then there are some low functioning autistic people. So there is a high range there. We've always categorized it as housing and employment on the top of the list, and transportation. Now, transportation in this county, okay, because of what county government has done, has been fabulous. Okay, we've got, you know, accessible buses in Westchester, and we have paratransit, which is fantastic. It's one of the best paratransit systems in the state of New York, and I tell all my colleagues that all the time because of the number of trips that the county is able to provide people to work, to doctor's appointments, just to shopping. So transportation in this county has not been an issue for the last, I would say, since the early 90s. It stopped really being an issue. But housing and employment are huge issues.
Well, let me ask you a question. What's the impediments? Is it discrimination? Is it physical impediments? Is it a combination?
It's always a combination. It's you know, a lot of people know people won't hire somebody who's disabled. Okay. There's also the issue of being qualified for a job. And are you qualified? Do you have the right education? Have you acquired that? Still, you know, in terms of percentages, disabled people don't make it to colleges. It's changed. It's gotten better. But still, they estimate that 67% of people with disabilities are unemployed. Now, that's the total number. So it includes people who may have severe disabilities. So it includes the entire range of person with disabilities. In this county, affordable housing is a humongous issue. And then when you add for the disabled, affordable and accessible housing, you know, you've just compounded the problem by 100%. So, you know, it becomes a major issue for disabled people who want to be more independent, who don't want to live with their families, and yet may need Section 8 subsidized housing that may not exist, so that they don't qualify because there aren't enough Section 8 certificates available in any particular municipality. So housing continues to be one of our bigger challenges. I want at least one barrier, which is that idea of the person saying, I'm disabled and I can't do that, to stop. I wanted people to say, I can do that, okay, and what am I going to do to convince that employer that I'm able to do this job? And am I prepared to convince them? Because that's one aspect of it. If you're not confident about who you are, you're not going to be able to convince that employer to hire you. And that's so important when you go to an interview. You have to project, I can do this job, and you would be foolish not to hire me, notwithstanding that I have a disability, and to also have the confidence to share the disability. It would be silly of me to go into a job interview and not talk about my disability. Now, I would talk about it in terms of also being more than qualified for the job at hand, but I would have to alleviate that person's concerns. Legally, do you have to do that? Absolutely not. Legally, the law says that employer cannot ask any questions about disability, even if it's an obvious disability. But what we urge people to do is self-disclose, talk about it. Over the last 2 years, we have somebody on staff who has been going out to do that, because that's the other side of the coin. And certainly we have an organization called Access VR. It used to be called VESID a few years back. Now it's called Access VR. That's a vocational rehab agency that's all about employment and training people. So we partner with them on in a lot of different ways. Because that's their job, is to help somebody receive training and then help also with placement assistance. So we really combine our Partners for Success program with what they do as well, and they refer a lot of people to us because they want people to be as prepared as possible to take advantage of opportunities. So they've seen the benefit of the Partners for Success program as well. So the Partners program has been a big one. In terms of housing, we really are starting to partner with developers more. And that we can help them maybe with case management once the building is built and they rent to somebody with a disability. We might be able to assist that person, make sure that everything stays fine, that they're able to pay their rent subsidized buildings that are going up really require the developers to partner with a not-for-profit that can provide assistance to tenants.
So what are ways that people in the community are able to help you in your efforts?
Well, in terms of if they know somebody with a disability who might need us, I think that's the first thing, referring them to us, having them contact us, or the person contacting to get more information, because sometimes you might give somebody a number but they won't make the phone call. So if you make the phone call to us, we'll get information out to you that at least you can kind of leave on the table for the person and make it easy for them to kind of see it. That's one approach. I think in general, people just being more aware that disabled people are here. We're in the community. I know we're seeing more disabled people, but you still don't see that many disabled people on the street. Probably in a place like White Plains, you probably see more because it is so accessible. It is fairly flat. So you see more people in the downtown area. In Austin, for instance, not so much will you see people just on the street.
Well, because the physical challenge.
It's the nature of the
challenge of a hilly community.
Of the hills. Yonkers is the same way. It's so hilly that to be traversing the hills makes it impossible. But we are seeing more people. And the thing I think for the general community is just to be more aware of the disabled, that we're here. We just want to participate. Some of us are very nice people, and some of us may not be so
just
nice.
The general,
like everybody else.
The general complexity of humanity.
Exactly. We're just like everybody else, and that's how we should be treated.
A lot of discriminatory practices don't happen out of malice, but out of ignorance. The more you can do to reduce that ignorance, the better off everyone is.
Absolutely, and that's a lifetime challenge because it's the more you do, the more you think, wow, I still have so much more that we have to do in this county and in this region and in this state, because it's kind of continues. I think at one point in my life, I thought, okay, there'll be a point that we will get to. People won't need independent living. It'll be there. Well, 32 years later, I know we'll never achieve that point because there'll be somebody new, there'll be somebody younger, there'll be somebody else coming in that needs those services and needs those supports.
So it's an ongoing
it's always
thing.
Going to be there. We have found over the years that the Latinos were not coming to us for service. And yet we knew that the percentages of Latinos in this community is large, for a number of reasons. And the population of Latinos is growing tremendously. You know, in Austin, that population
Westchester
has
County,
grown. In Westchester, New Rochelle, and Yonkers, it's just Yonkers. It's almost like 50%. They're getting close to a 50%.
In the Austin School District, it is 50%.
Okay, so we know because of that, they've got lots of people, both children with physical disabilities plus seniors. Historically, Latinos have not come to us for services, and not just for our center, but all of the independent living centers, which I think is the stigma issue of saying, I'm not going to identify as having a disability, because that may mean something negative to them. The project was one to reach agencies that have nothing to do with disability, but deal with Latinos, whether it's immigrants or other groups that might come to them for service, and let them know about us as a disability group.
Interesting. So how is that going? What is that partnership? What are some of the organizations?
It's going fabulously. We have found that people are starting just to disseminate information in general and just let people know that we're here. We're here to provide you service. We speak Spanish, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking staff, which I think is really critical to the idea of someone feeling comfortable in coming to our organization, is that they know that somebody will speak to them in Spanish, so they don't have that barrier of the disability and the language being an added barrier for them in trying to deal with us.
Excellent. All right, so people know where to find you. Leave us with some last words.
My last words are just, if you need assistance from the center, please come to us. We're here at 200 Hamilton Avenue in White Plains.
Right near the DMV?
Right here, across the hall from the DMV in White Plains, at the old White Plains Mall. And we're more than willing to assist. And if we can't help you, we will find somebody who
you'll
can.
know where. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was
Thank
really
you
a pleasure
for having
to
us.
speak to you. I was happy to learn a little bit more. And thank you very much for joining us in this episode of Hudson Valley News and Views. And please continue to consider integrating the disabled into your life, too.